Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Gareth here from tastytuts.com. So in the previous episode, we learned how to set up a document to a particular print specification. Now it's time to start building the creative elements to feature in the book cover design. In this tutorial, I'm going to discuss and demonstrate how you can create this 3D paper type composition in Adobe Photoshop. Once created, we will be using this in the main book cover for our book cover design. Now, if you wish to have a go at this yourself and follow along, you will need to download and install the fonts so you will load them correctly into Photoshop. The font instructions can be found in the 3D paper type folder in the Create a Project folder in the Project folder. Now, you can download this project folder for free. The download link is in the description. If you wish to take a closer look at this document, you can find it in the Final Artwork folder in the Project folder. Now, we are going to be covering a lot in this video and in quite some depth. If you wish to skip ahead to any point in the video or back, you can do so quite simply. The topics covered in this video are listed in the description and in the downloadable PDF, along with their times. So be sure to check that out. Okay, so with all that said, let's get into it. So here I have this 3D paper type composition. What makes this type seem interesting is the shadow effects behind the letters. This gives it a nice three-dimensional feel, as if the letters have been cut out of paper and layered on top of each other in a playful way. Now, this is actually quite easy to create. In this video, I'm going to be showcasing some simple tips and techniques to acquire this look and feel. Okay, so I'll close this document, and we are back to the document we set up in the previous video. Now, if we take a look at the finished design, we can see that there are lots of creative elements that make up this design. Now, we could start to build the type composition in the new document, but as we progress and create lots of other elements, it will get very busy and complex. What we are going to do here is focus on creating the 3D paper type, but we are going to do this independent of the book cover document. And we will do this so we can really focus on the job at hand. So now I'm going to start by creating a new document. I'll come up to File, New. From the Preset tab, I'll choose International Paper. From the size, I'll choose A4, and I'll make sure my resolution is set to 300. My color mode is set to CMYK, and I'll click OK. So here is our new document, but currently it's set to Portrait. I'll quickly come up to Image, Rotate, and click Rotate Canvas 90 degrees clockwise. Now I have this nice landscape canvas area. So why did I go for the A4 size? Well, I chose A4 because I know that this document size is bigger than my book cover document. So whatever I create in this canvas size will be adequate for my book cover design. So just like earlier, I'll quickly come over into the Layers panel and double click on the background layer. With the pop-up menu, I'll call this layer White Base and click OK. With the layer selected, I'll press Command T. So this will activate Free Transform, and now I can see the bounding box around the full white base area. This bounding box is giving me a clear indication of the center of the document. So I'll press Command R to activate the guides. I'll drag a guide in from the left and from the top. So just like that, I have the center and midline. And I'll press Enter to turn off Free Transform. So next, I'll jump back into the book cover document we set up earlier. I'll click on the background folder in the Layers panel. I'll press V to activate the Move tool, click into the canvas area, and drag up into the New Document tab. I'll drag my mouse cursor into the canvas area of the new document, and release click, and drop in the background blue sky into the new document. Then I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform. I'll press and hold Alt on the keyboard, click on the left handle, and drag out. Notice this will also push out right as well. I'll click on the top, drag up, and soon I'll fill the background sky into my new document. So now I have the nice blue background sky from the original document. Nice. Now those background layers may be quite big in the document, so I'll press C to activate crop, click and drag over the entire canvas area and press Enter. And that will crop the blue sky to the document area. So now we are ready to start creating the type. So at this point, I'll press Command : to toggle the visibility of the guides away. I don't need these right now, they're just going to distract me. So I'll start by creating the word paper. So I'll press T to activate the type tool. So I'll come over to the right and make sure my character panel is visible. If you cannot see your character panel, you can come up to Window and activate it there. First, I'll come into the menu, click on the foreground color. In the value, I'll type F 6 times. This will give me a perfect white color. In the character panel, I'll type in Facile into the font name and choose Facile Sans. I'll make sure the leading is set to auto, tracking is set to 0, and the font size is set to 150. So in the canvas area, I'll click once and type P. Once created, I'll press and hold Command and D and press Enter. This will deselect the type. If this is looking a little small, I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform, then press and hold Shift and Alt and click and drag on a corner point to increase the size like so, and press Enter to commit. So here we have the first letter on a single type layer. So next I'm going to create the letter A, but this time with the new type layer P selected in the Layers panel. I'll press V to activate the Move tool, I'll press and hold Alt and drag to the right a little like so. This will quickly duplicate this layer. I'll press T to activate the Type tool, I'll click into the type, select it and type A. Then I'll press and hold Command and D and press Enter to deselect the type. I'll press V to activate the Move tool and I can move this letter around like so. So using the same technique, I'm going to create the next letter P. So I'll select the P type layer in the Layers panel. With the Move tool active, I'll click and drag right holding Alt and quickly duplicate the layer. Easy. I'll just quickly do that again. Alt and drag. I'll press T, click into the type, change the letter to E, and I'll press and hold Command and D and press Enter to deselect the type. So using the same technique, I'll create the last type layer, R. So now I have each individual type layer on its own layer. This is going to enable me to move them around flexibly and treat them as individual objects. So in the Layers panel, I'll select the top type layer, press Shift and select the bottom type layer. With them all selected, I'll move them into the middle of the canvas with the Move tool. Now, with them still currently selected in the Layers panel, I'll press Command G to group them together into a layer folder. I'll double click on the folder name and call this Paper. So now I have my layers created. It's now time to modify them to create a more interesting and playful composition. So I'll start with the letter A. With the Move tool active, I'll click on the type layer A in the Layers panel and move it over next to P. On this occasion, I want it to be smaller than P, so I'll press Command T, press and hold Shift and Alt, click on a corner point and drag in like so. Once happy, I'll come into the Layers panel, select the third letter P. With the Move tool active, I'll move it over next to A. On this occasion, I want it to be a little smaller, so I'll press Command T, press and hold Shift and Alt, click on a corner point and drag it in like so, and place it carefully next to A. Once happy, I'll come into the Layers panel and select the type layer E. With the Move tool, I'll move it over to P. Again, I'll press Command T, press and hold Shift and Alt, click on a corner point and drag it in. I'll make this a little smaller and place it carefully over P. Once happy, I'll come into the Layers panel, select R. With the Move tool, I'll move it over next to E. I'll press Command T, press and hold Shift and Alt, click on a corner point, drag it in, and place it carefully on the E, like so. Cool. So now we have this interesting and playful type composition. Next, I'll come into the Layers panel, select the paper group, and move this into the middle as a whole. I'll press Command T, and a bounding box will appear around the entire type comp. I'll press Command : to activate the guides, and I'll place the type comp in the middle like so, using the middle point as a guide. Then I'll press Enter to turn off Free Transform and Command : to hide the guides. So now we have the first type composition, but at the moment they are all merging into one. What I'm going to do next is add subtle shadow effects to give the type a 3D overlapping feel. So before I do this, I need to pay close attention to the layer structure in the Layers panel. So here I want the first letter P to be on top of the letter A. So I'll click and drag the type layer P in the Layers panel to the top. Next, I want the third letter P to be on top of the second letter A. So I'll click this in the Layers panel and drag under the top P. Next, I want E to be on top of the third letter P. So I'll click on E and drag it above the third letter P. Now I want letter R to be behind E, so I'll just leave it below the other layers for now. Now it's not apparent what the layer structure is in the canvas area, as all the type is white. They appear to be merging together, but it's now clearly defined in the Layers panel. So now I can start to create the shadows. So I'll zoom in here and start on the letter A. So now I want to create some shadow effects on top of the letter to give the illusion that the two letters above are hovering over it. So first I'll come into the Layers panel. Since I'm going to create a new shadow layer directly above the letter A, I'll come and select the A type layer in the Layers panel and press Command-Shift-N. This will create a new layer. I'll call this Shadow A, and here we have a new transparent layer above the type layer. So next I'll press B to activate the brush tool. I'll come into the menu and click on the foreground colour and type in 0 6 times. This will give me a perfect black colour. With the brush tool active, I'll right click, choose a feathered brush, set the brush size to 400 and press enter. Next, I'll come up into the control panel and set the opacity of the brush to 5%. Now I'm ready to start to create the shadow effects. But first, I need to do something quite important. So I'll come into the Layers panel, I'll press and hold Command on the keyboard and click the thumbnail type icon of the letter A. Upon clicking the thumbnail icon, we will now make a selection in the canvas area of the letter A. Perfect. So with the new A shadow layer still selected, now I'm carefully going to start to click just under the letter P as it overlaps the letter A. Because the opacity of the brush is set to 5%, it's going to build up the shadow gradually as I click. So I'll just click a few times to build up the shadow nicely. I'll press the keyboard shortcut to decrease the brush size, and I can just click a little under the P to add concentration to the shadow effect, like so. I'll press the keyboard shortcut to increase the brush size, come over to the right and click some more to create the shadow of the third letter P, overlapping the letter A. I'll toggle down the brush and increase the shadow effect like so. Once I'm happy, I'll press Command D to deselect the active selection. And just like that, we have created a subtle shadow effect, but only on top of the A-type layer. Simple. If you wish to edit the shadow further, be sure to press and hold Command and click the layer icon of the letter A again to make the selection and continue to add to the shadow effect. If you feel you have overdone the shadow effect, simply toggle the opacity of the shadow layer in the Layers panel, or press E to activate the eraser tool, select a feathered brush. With the opacity set to 5%, simply click to erase some of the shadow effect away. Easy. So next, I want to create the same effect, but this time on the third letter P, under the letter E. So back in the Layers panel, I'll select the third letter P, I'll select the type layer, I'll press Command-Shift-N, I'll call this layer Shadow P, and just like earlier, I'll come into the Layers panel, press and hold Command, though this time select the P type layer icon. Upon click, the P area will be selected. I'll press B to activate the brush tool. I'll increase the brush size with the keyboard shortcut and click where the E overlaps the P and create the nice shadow effect like so. When I'm happy, I'll press Command D to deselect the active selection. So lastly, I'll come into the Layers panel, select the R layer, press Command-Shift-N to create a new layer. I'll call this Shadow R. press and hold Command, select the R type layer icon to activate the selection. I'll press B and click into the selection to create the shadow. Once happy, I'll press Command D to deselect the active selection. So now we have this nice type composition with the 3D shadow effects applied. In the Layers panel, we have the paper group folder containing the type layers and the shadow layers all in the right structure. So once we are happy with the word paper, it's now a case of creating the next word, friends. Now to do this, we will be using the exact same technique as demonstrated with the word above, but with a few additional details. So first, let's come to the project folder. With the project folder open, I'll click Create a Project, and I'll open the 3D paper type folder, and I'll see a color swatch image. I'll open this in Photoshop. I'll press Command A to select all, Command C to copy, then I'll press Command W to close the document. Back in the new document, I'll select the paper folder in the Layers panel and press Command V to paste, and this will paste it on top in the Layers panel. So this is a color swatch which is going to help us create the next word with the right colors. I'll drag this to the bottom like so, out of the way. So next, I'll come back into the paper folder in the Layers panel. I'll select the top P type layer. With the Move tool active, I'll press and hold Alt and drag down and across like so, again duplicating the type layer. Once duplicated, I'll click the new layer in the Layers panel and drag it out of the paper folder and toggle up the paper folder like so. With the Type tool, I'll click inside and change to F. This time, however, with the new layer selected, up in the control panel, I'll click the square color, and with the eyedropper tool, I'll move my cursor over the color swatch and select the first color to change the color like so. Then I'll press and hold Command and D and press Enter to deselect the type. So using the same technique, I'm going to duplicate this type layer. With the Type tool, I'll select it, change the letter, click the color box up in the control panel and select the next color in the swatch. Again, for the next letter, and I'll continue until I have all the letters. So now I have all the letters in the right colors. Excellent. So now in the Layers panel, I'll select the top layer, press and hold Shift and select the bottom type layer. Then I'll press Command G to group these together. I'll double click on the folder name and call it Friends. With the group selected, I can move the type into the middle like so. So like earlier, I'm going to modify the letters to create a more interesting layout. So in the Friends layer group, I'll select the letter R, move it over to the letter F. Currently, it's on top of F. I want it behind F, so in the Layers panel, I'll move it below. I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform, press and hold Shift and Alt, and click on a corner point to drag the scale down like so. Once happy, I'll press Enter. So next, I'll bring the letter I over, I'll bring the letter E over and scale that down. I'll bring the letter N over, but I want this behind the letter E. So in the Layers panel, I'll drag this below and scale that down. I'll bring the letter D over, that's cool on top. I'll bring the letter S over, but I want this behind the letter D. So in the Layers panel, I'll drag this below it and scale it down. So now I have my new type composition for Friends. So I'll click on the Friends folder group, move it more into the middle. I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform. I can see the bounding box. I'll press Command colon to activate the guides and place the new type composition right in the middle like so. I'll press Command colon again to hide guides and press Enter to turn off Free Transform. With the folder selected in the Layers panel and with the Move tool active, I'll press the arrow keys on the keyboard to finally place the new composition under the type composition above. Also, at this stage, I can right-click to quickly select type layers and move them around in the composition with the arrow keys to refine the composition further. At this stage, I'll click the swatch layer and delete it as I no longer require it. So now all that's left to do is create the shadow effects under the letters as demonstrated earlier on the Friends type. So in the Layers panel, I'll start with R. I'll click the type layer, press Command-Shift-N to create a new layer. I'll name this Shadow R. I'll press and hold Command and select the R type layer icon to create the selection. I'll press B to activate the brush tool. Now the settings should still be the same as previous, though I'll make sure the foreground colour is set to black. I'll type in 0 6 times. I'll press the keyboard shortcuts to toggle the brush size and brush in the shadow effect like so. Nice. Next, I'll create the shadow layer for N. Make the selection and create the shadow. Finally, I'll create the last shadow layer on S. And there we have our last type composition complete. Finally, I'll toggle the Friends folder in. I'll press and hold Shift, select the Friends folder, then the Paper folder, and move both type compositions up more into the middle. So the last thing we need to do is save the document. So I'll come up to File, Save, and navigate to the Project folder, navigate to the My Project folder, and save it as Book Header Type, and click OK. So that's how you can create a playful 3D paper type effect in Adobe Photoshop. So if we look at the finished design, we can see that the header is indeed positioned around additional illustrative elements. We have clouds, an air balloon, and this rainbow. In the next video, we are going to continue to build our header composition, though look at how we can create the illustrative elements, the clouds, the rainbow, and the air balloon. See you in the next video.